This is Slushy here, and this was requested of me, so I'm gonna go ahead and make a video about it. I'm gonna show you guys how to do custom weapons from scratch. So, for example, in this example, I'm actually going to be machine pistol or the fabricated pistol into my weapon of choice. You can do this with anything, any weapon. In my case, I've done it with a bow and as well as another pistol. So this is my bow example of that I'm currently working on. So this is the bow, and I can show you how I went about modeling for it and getting it to work with the dev kit and basically replacing the bow model. So, but in this case, I'm gonna go ahead and show through a gun. We'll go ahead and get started. First things first is we are going to need the primal item. The primal item is basically the thing that you will see in the inventory. And this primal item will talk to the weapon template. And in my case, it would be right here. And this is my weapon template. So you would make a copy of that and basically reassign it. And then we go ahead and open the weapon template. Yours won't look like this. You'll have to hit the little highlighted text that says open full blueprint editor. And now you can see the mesh and the first person mesh. So basically, when you press play and you are giving yourself your weapon, you have a third person as well as a first person. You press F8, you can see that's what that is. So the third person will always be seen by other players, and then the first person will only be seen by the client or the owner. So we'll go ahead and start changing the models. To get started, to make this a little easier on myself, I'm going to need to make a copy of the skeletal mesh for both the third and the first person. And so I go ahead and just make the meshes right here, my own copies. I also need to go find the skeletals. So you would open the skeletal mesh and you can click the skeleton, find the skeleton, and then you just make a copy of this guy. And I just made a copy of here. So I'm gonna rename these for simplicity. This is my first person rig copy, and this is my third person rig copy. And you will need these. They are required for getting the dev kit to access your stuff after you made all of your copies. And we will end up deleting these later on, but right now we will need them for exporting reasons. So we'll go ahead and work on the first one. So with the machine pistol, we will go ahead and asset actions export. We can go ahead and name it to whatever. In my case, I'm just going to rename it to something simple so I can find it. All these settings are just like that. If you want to pause the video, go ahead. And we'll go ahead and export it. And now that we have the first person exported, what you can do is you can make your own model, or you can go to websites like Fab, and you can just search what you might be looking for. In my case, I'm looking for a gun. Okay, I would like a gun that would be kind of easy to work with. I can't do a revolver, so because I need something with a hammer that slides back. That would make this a little bit easier to work with. You don't have to do this, but it's just something to keep in mind. Every model has their own. You can spend some money in getting a nice model. But in my case, I just found this model. And so I'm going to use this model as my personal. Make sure you're reading the licenses. There are rules on licenses. You can't make a premium mod with a asset if the license doesn't allow you to. So make sure to read that. I go ahead and download this. Once it's downloaded, it will be, in my case, it will just be the FBX file and then all the texturing that's for this. So I'll go ahead and open up Blender. And this is what Blender gave me when I imported the model. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. We're gonna go ahead and import the first person FBX for the dev kit. So this is the first person FBX. This is basically, you have your skeleton rig, and then you have the model. There's a couple things we need to do, but before that, I'm gonna go ahead and clean up this. I'm gonna press H to hide the model, just to get rid of it. And I actually don't need this, and I think that's all I'm going to mess with, essentially. I'm gonna go ahead and select all of everything in this scene, and I will actually do Control J to make it all one mesh. So now if I click elsewhere, it's all, one mesh that I can move around. We will unhide our pistol by doing Alt-H. I'm gonna move this off to the side. I don't need it right now. One thing that's kind of annoying when you're importing skeleton meshes, when you do it, for some reason, they are given a collection. We don't want the collection, so what we'll do is we will delete the collection. that will make the model super big. So now you have your root, the skeletal root, and then the actual model itself, which is over here. The reason why it goes so big is just because of Blender not liking Unreal. What we need to do for this is we click the root and we need to scale it back down to 0.1. All we did is just scale the model down. This will make it easier to mess with. Do not mess with the rotation that it is currently set to. So if it's at -90, I believe we should in this case. But when you, yeah, so, oopie, we'll go ahead and reset no, we won't mess with the rotation. Okay. So let's go ahead and just save it. So now we're going to go ahead and start making this model replace this model, but in Blender. So we'll just pick the x-axis, we'll grab the pistol, rotate the pistol. Now with the pistol rotated finally, we'll go ahead and do our best to get the model to line up with that section. So I'm going to line it up right about there. It looks like the model's a little bit too small. So we're going to scale it. We're going to scale it up just a smidge. You can use the scale option right here. And that looks relatively as good as it's going to get. It is a smaller model. That looks good enough for me. We're going to go ahead and fix the orientation of where this is, just like so. Perfect. And now we need to actually do the replacing part of the model. This model might have some issues with the way it looks, so you're more than welcome to keep playing with its, like, where it is in the world. It might not line up properly. You can go into the editing of the model. We hide the other model. You can do a little bit of vertex editing, and you can move everything that you think that would make it to fit. But in this case, that's a Blender thing. Go ahead and not show everything that we had before. This looks good enough for me. Maybe, yeah, I would have to play with the position just a little bit, but that looks good enough for me. Now what we're going to go ahead and do, before we start linking it, now we need to go over a little bit on how vertices and skeletons work in Unreal. So if we go ahead and go into the Devkit, and just to show you something, if I go find a random skeleton bone, so this one, if we notice, if we start messing with the skeleton, the vertices that are assigned to that section of the mesh is what we'll be, oopsie, is what we'll be messing with. And so we need to tell Blender that the vertices that are assigned to this section of the mesh will be assigned to this section of the bone. So if you notice, if I reset this model and we mess with the slide, this section of the mesh is the slide trigger. And then we have the cartridge, which is the mesh inside of it. It's hidden inside. And we know that this mesh has multiple bones assigned to it. So we will go ahead and go look over this in Blender. To look over this in Blender, you would select the mesh, go to the vertices, and then these are all the vertice groups. This just means that this section of the mesh is assigned to that bone. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Edit by pressing Tab, click Elsewhere, click one of our vertice groups, and we're going to go select and go, oh, okay, so this is the underbody of the gun. Just click Elsewhere. This is the trigger. Okay, cool. Go and click Elsewhere. Select. There's the slide of the gun. Click Elsewhere. And then there is our magazine. Perfect. So now we have, these are all separated between the different points of the bones that we will be messing with. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to grab all the vertices and we're going to delete them all. So there's no more mesh in that space. We're going to go ahead and unhide our pistol that we had before. And then in order, you will click the pistol and then we will not shift, but you do the pistol and then the rig. And you'll do Control J to join it. And if done correctly, the root will stay, this will stay, and then this will stay. So now this mesh is a part of the skeleton. But we still need to assign all these vertice groups to this new system. Because if we go into edit mode and we click select, there's no vertices that we can mess with. So the tedious part now begins. So now I need to go to the trigger and I need to select all of this trigger and assign it to the trigger vertex group. And then same for the slide, same for the offset, and then same for the magazine. I'm gonna go ahead and skip over that. In the case that you have now fully set your custom mesh to the guns and you've assigned the vertex groups, this is how it looks for mine. So if I go into edit mode, I can see that, okay, so the pistol offset was everything, including the suppressor. as well as any extra bips and bobs. And then if I click elsewhere, select, this is the trigger that we wanted. And you can assign by just clicking and Control L if the model supports it. And then you just click assign to the vertex group you want. Vertex group. This is our slide. And then this is our magazine. Kind of hard to see, but go into X-ray mode. This is the inside of the gun that we wanted. Turn off export mode. And then you will go ahead and file, export, and you will name it whatever you want. These are all my armature and geometry settings. This matters, so you need to pay attention to that. So they include your transform, your geometry, your armature, and we don't have any animations, but I guess if you want to include it, you're more than welcome to. Go ahead and export it. We will go back into the Devkit. And now, I did mess up something along the line, so I'm going to go ahead and just fix this real quick. Basically, I ended up deleting my skeleton by accident, so I need to go refine my skeleton. So I'm going to go grab my skeleton, go back into the... So this is my third person skeleton, and I'm going to move my first person into this folder. First person rig copy. Perfect. Close this. Close this. We don't need any more of that. And that's why we keep it, so we can just find it. But you'll go ahead and import your first person custom mesh you just did. It's going to try to ask you for a skeleton. We don't want it, so we're going to go ahead and clear it. Any other options we need to say? Go ahead and import the mesh. It's going to give you its own skeleton of physics assets as well as the skeletal mesh. We do not want these two options, so we'll go ahead and delete those. And now you have your skeletal mesh as well as the vanilla copy of the rig or the skeleton. So now we need to tell this skeletal mesh to attach to this one. So right click the mesh, assign to skeleton. You go ahead and go find your skeleton. In our case, it's our FPV rig copy. And when you do this, you need to make sure that if you are missing some, it's not a whole bunch. When you click accept, it's going to ask you if you want to create any of these missing bones that it couldn't find. You need to validate that these are mostly ends. Ends are not important bones, but if there's a bunch and you click accept, you can get an error if you didn't do the process right. So you go ahead and click OK. It's going to just basically assign a bunch of ends, and it's going to link this skeleton to this skeleton. We can go ahead and save both of these. And now you can see that our mesh that we just, oopsie. Now you can see that our mesh that we were working on is right there. Perfect. And now we will go into our weapon template, full screen it, full viewport it, make it a little bit easier to see. Go back. And we did mess with the first person, so we'll be replacing the first person. First person gets moved over. And you can see looks like we missed something along the lines that we don't know what this was. This looks, I'm not even entirely sure what that was. So I would have to go back into Blender and attempt to find that model that we did not select. To do that in simpler, we can just do select, 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 select. And then so this is selecting everything, and we notice that, hey, this part of the mesh wasn't selected. So we can go ahead and click elsewhere. Do Control L to grab all of it. Looks like it didn't grab all of it. Hit period to go to it. Select all of it again. Make sure there's nothing on the other side. Perfect. And then this is a part of the offset, so we'll go ahead and assign it there. And we'll do this process again. We'll select that, select that, select that, select that, overlook it. And just in case we're missing something, we can press H to hide the model. See if we're missing anything. Nothing was good or nothing was missed. So we're good. Go ahead and file, export once more. Make sure you are overriding what we are going to be importing. Export the mesh. And we can go ahead and re-import. This just overwrites this. You do not need to do the rig again. Once it's set from your skeletal mesh to the vanilla, you can go ahead and just save it. And once it is saved, you can tell if it's working by just looking at it. If it's swaying back and forth, it means it's animated. So we'll go ahead and compile it. Go and press play. Go into first person, give myself that weapon, and there's our pistol. And it's even animated. Of course, I don't have enough bullets to do this for this gun. But now that we did the first person, we also need to do the same process of going into Blender. So this is all saved. This is so we can save it, get out of edit mode, delete everything in the hierarchy, delete hierarchy. You can go ahead and import the, oh, I'm sorry, we need to go back into the Devkit and we export the third person, give it a name, give it an export, export it out, and then you do the same process of importing it, importing the rig. So there's the third person rig, and if we look, it still has, oops, we go to the model. This one has less vertex groups, and you can select to see which ones are what. So there's a trigger, there's the cylinder or the slider, and then there's the body of the pistol. And just like before, we need to delete the root so it goes all big like that, and then click down here, go to the edit, and we need to drop its size down because Blender, my settings don't import it properly. So we need to bring it down, import our other mesh that we had, which would be our gun model, and you would clean it up and basically reassign it just like you would in the third person or in the first person. So once you have both of those models done, you will basically have a pistol or a weapon that is custom made in an instance of models. And you can spend a lot of time doing your models, doing your arrows and such. For bows, it is a little different. For a bow, at least it wants you to make a skeletal or a static mesh of the arrow, and you sign it, and then a third person mesh, a static mesh, and then the first person static mesh or skeletal mesh, and then third person skeletal mesh, and then you can do all of your stuff. Just like the gun, when you import a bow, let me open my Blender again. When you import a bow, and import FBX. Let's give my bow, for example. So here's the compound third person, and then compound first person. First person does have the arrow. If we look, the arrow is actually a part of it. And it's the same premise of basically you clicking the model, going in, this is all of the vertex groups for that model. So if I go into edit mode, if we look, so click elsewhere, this is the arrow, this is the bow, kind of. And then the bow has extra limbs that are used to calculate stretch and not calculate, but animate the limbs bending. So when you pull this cable, these limbs will bend. And so if you wish to do that, you can. You don't have to. In my case, when I was working on the bow that you guys seen a moment ago, okay. In my case, with my bow, I didn't want these limbs to bend, and so I don't have to assign anything to the vertex groups. For example, if I click my bow, I only have 3 compared to the compound. Compound has, I believe, 7. So in my case, I just had my arrow. I just had the bow itself, including the limbs down below, and then the string. And yeah, that is how, and I would export this, assign my skeletal mesh to the vanilla's skeletal mesh, do the prompt that it gives me, and double check to make sure none of my stuff look weird. And now I did all, and that just lets me basically overwrite the mesh. If you want to go down the rabbit hole of animations, what you would do is you would go and make your own animation class. So this is the compound bow class. If you go to the class itself, the animation blueprint, open that up. And this is basically every single animation. So if you want to do your own animations, to my understanding, you have to open up the animation blueprint and dig through to see what you want to edit. If I do not even know how to go to the actual, there we go. So these are all the animations of the bow. So if I open this animation blueprint. This is the animation that the game will run. To my understanding, you click a bone and you can add keyframes of what it's doing, and then that is how you would do it. So if you want to make your own, you would have to navigate to wherever this animation is. So if you wanted to make your own animations for weapons, you would have to make what's called an animation sequence, and then you would apply it to the actual animation blueprint. So I hope this will explain on how to do at least custom models using the vanilla animations. I hope you guys enjoyed.